There is a narrative in the Old Testament that, to be completely honest with you, I consider the most shocking of all. The Bible contains stories that may not be appropriate for a younger audience, and this is one of them. Before continuing with this video, it is important to warn that the content may not be suitable for all ages and could trigger painful memories for some people. This story is found in chapters 19 to 21 of the Book of Judges. Although many have heard about chapter 19, few delve into the entire narrative. However, I believe that in its entirety, it holds fundamental lessons we can learn, even from such a disturbing account. First, I will recount the events dramatically, and then we will analyze the lessons we can draw from this story. Join me in the Book of Judges, chapter 19. At that time, when there was no king in Israel, a Levite lived in the mountainous region of Ephraim. This man took a woman from Bethlehem in Judah as his concubine. It is important to note that he lived in the north of Israel, while his concubine came from the south, from Bethlehem. The story tells us that this woman was unfaithful to the Levite, left him, and returned to her father's house in Bethlehem, where she stayed for 4 months. After this time, the Levite decided to go in search of her, traveling from the mountains of Ephraim to Bethlehem with the intention of reconciling and restoring the relationship. When he arrived in Bethlehem, the woman's father received him with great hospitality. For several days, the Levite attempted to leave with his wife, but the father insisted that they stay 1 more night. This was repeated until finally the Levite decided to leave. It is from this point that the tragedy begins to unfold. During their journey back north, as night fell, they approached Jebus. His servant suggested they spend the night in that Jebusite city, but the Levite refused, arguing that they should not stay in a foreign city. Instead, they decided to continue to Gibeah. They arrived in Gibeah at dusk, but found no one to take them in. In Israelite culture, hospitality was an essential value, and it was common for travelers to be welcomed into someone's home. Finally, an old man found them in the square and, upon learning of their situation, offered them lodging. The Levite thanked him and assured him that they only needed a place to rest and food for their animals. However, what happened next took the story on a dark and terrifying course. During the night, wicked men of the city surrounded the house and demanded that the old man hand over his guest so they could abuse him. The old man tried to dissuade them, pleading with them not to commit such an atrocity, and in his desperation, he offered his own virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine instead. What happens next is unimaginable. In verse 25, we read that, under the aggressor's insistence, the Levite gave them his concubine. The men violated her and brutally mistreated her all night long. At dawn, they abandoned her. Now you understand why I emphasize from the beginning that this story is not suitable for minors and that it may reopen painful memories. Imagine the suffering of this woman, dishonored again and again until she was left without strength. Finally, she managed to crawl back to the door of the house where her master was staying, but there she collapsed, unable to enter. At sunrise, the Levite opened the doors to continue his journey, only to find his concubine fallen at the entrance, with her hands stretched out toward the threshold. When he ordered her to get up, there was no response. The woman had died. The story continues with a shocking act. The Levite took his concubine's body and brought it home. The Levite took a knife, divided his concubine's body into 12 parts, and sent each one to the different regions of Israel. Those who witnessed what had happened were perplexed and shocked, stating that nothing so horrific had ever been seen since the Israelites had left Egypt. It is crucial to reflect on this. After the tragedy, the Levite did not only mutilate his concubine's body, but also attached a letter to each part sent to the 12 tribes of Israel. In each message, he detailed the atrocious crime committed in Gibeah, pointing to the men of the tribe of Benjamin as responsible. When the other tribes received these body parts and read about the cruel fate of the woman, they were horrified. They declared that such a terrible event had never before occurred in Israel's history. This story continues in chapters 20 and 21 of the book of Judges, and there is still much to explore. From this point, we will begin to extract some lessons. First lesson, the absence of responsibility. When responsibility is lacking in our lives, there is a strong tendency to stray from the right path. Judges 19 emphasizes this point by stating, "In those days there was no king in Israel. When we do not feel the need to be accountable, when we do not take responsibility for our decisions and actions, we become prone to making destructive choices." At that time, there was no king in Israel, and although laws existed, they were neither respected nor enforced. As a result, people began to act recklessly without fear of consequences. The lack of responsibility triggered a series of unexpected and disastrous events. Second lesson, the value of every human being. Another key aspect of this story is the importance of recognizing that every person bears the image of God. In the narrative, the old man from Gibeah presents a distorted perspective by claiming that harming a man would be a grave mistake. Yet at the same time, he suggests offering his virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine so that the attackers could do with them as they pleased. This mindset reflects a flawed way of thinking in which a man's life and dignity were considered more valuable than a woman's. It is essential that we recognize the worth of every person, regardless of gender, status, or condition, because we all bear God's image. This lesson also invites us to reflect on our daily attitudes, especially when consuming inappropriate content online, and challenges us to treat others with the respect and dignity they deserve. Third lesson, the danger of drifting away from God. As we distance ourselves from God, we become more vulnerable to committing actions we would have never imagined. If we analyze the book of Judges as a whole, we notice that Israel progressively drifted away from God. Chapters 19 to 21 represent the climax of this distancing, showing just how corrupt the nation had become. This narrative serves as a warning. If we do not maintain a firm relationship with God, we may stray and engage in things that once seemed unthinkable. Staying close to Him is essential to avoid falling into temptations and sins that we would not have even considered at another time. And the story becomes even more complex in chapter 20. The civil war broke out between the 11 tribes of Israel and the tribe of Benjamin due to the horrific crime committed by the latter against one of their own Israelite brothers. I recommend reading chapters 20 and 21 of the book of Judges in detail, but in summary, this colossal battle resulted in the loss of thousands of lives on both sides. By the end of the war, only 600 men from the tribe of Benjamin remained alive. Fourth lesson, our decisions bring inevitable consequences. In chapter 21, the other 11 tribes began to feel compassion for the Benjamites, concerned about their possible extinction. The 600 survivors had no women within their tribe to marry and continue their lineage. However, this compassion created a new problem, since the tribes of Israel had previously sworn not to give their daughters in marriage to the Benjamites. Here we learn a key lesson. A wrong decision brings inevitable consequences. Despite the grave initial mistake of the Benjamites, the decision of the other tribes to attack and nearly exterminate them was a choice that now brought unexpected problems. The Benjamites, in turn, also faced the repercussions of their destructive actions. This narrative teaches us that, although we are free to make decisions, we cannot choose the consequences that come with them. Fifth lesson, one bad decision often leads to another. To solve the problem, The Israelites made yet another bad decision. They allowed the Benjamites to abduct women during a festival, justifying this act with the excuse that by doing so, they would not be breaking their oath of not giving their daughters in marriage. This action shows us how one wrong decision often leads to another, creating a chain of errors with disastrous consequences. During the festival, 200 Benjamite men kidnapped women who were dancing, forcibly taking them to be their wives. It is evident how many lives were affected by a single wrong decision. Some Benjamite men faced the consequences of their actions, but the majority of the tribe, who had not directly participated in the initial crime, ended up suffering the devastating effects of the war. Moreover, the people of Jabesh-Gilead were also affected, as their women were taken from their land and forced into marriage with the surviving Benjamites. Sixth lesson: God's grace in the midst of chaos. Despite everything, God extended His grace even amid the most destructive decisions. The book of Judges concludes by informing us that the Benjamites managed to rebuild their cities, inhabit them, and receive a new opportunity. Each Israelite returned to their tribe and family, reclaiming their inheritance. The final verse of the book is key. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Judges 21:25. This phrase summarizes the entire book of Judges, highlighting the lack of effective leadership and the grave consequences of each person acting according to their own judgment. God, in His mercy, allowed the tribe of Benjamin to be restored, but this did not erase the consequences of their decisions. Although God's grace is available, our choices still have effects that, in many cases, are unpredictable and uncontrollable. Final reflection. If there is one thing I want you to remember from this video, it is that every decision we make has consequences. Some of them may be far greater than we imagine. I hope today's lessons have touched your heart and helped you reflect on the importance of our decisions. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. May God bless you and see you next time.